Okay. Welcome, herzlich willkommen, at B3 Biennial of the Moving Image. I'm Robert Glashüttner from Austrian Broadcasting Corporation. I'm the presenter today, and I'm very glad that I can do that because this is a very exciting panel. It's about learning with games and robots. We want to address the complex relationships between games and society in teaching and in research. I think we can say that we are all quite excited about robotics in general. I was at Ars Electronica Festival in Linz in Austria recently, where they had the Boston Dynamics robots, for example. I think we all know them. They were kind of scary, but also kind of exciting, of course. So we won't talk about them, I think, but maybe we do. Let's see. We can all learn about from robots a lot and from games, obviously, as well. So let me introduce to you the two wonderful panelists. We have Natalie Denk. She is a researcher and lecturer at Danube University in Krems in Austria, where she is heading the Center for Applied Game Studies. She's an expert in game-based learning and educational game design. I have to say my favorite course by Natalie, my favorite course of hers is called Action-Oriented Media Pedagogics. That sounds exciting. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. Natalie's researching questions like why are games engaging in general, and she combines game studies, media studies, and education studies. So welcome, Natalie, great to have you.
Hi.
And we have Ivan Filipov. He is based in the US on the West Coast, and he knows all about LEGO Mindstorms and LEGO Technic, where you can build your own robots, basically. I'm not that into it, I have to say, but I watched his videos because Ivan hosts the channel Unbrick Me on YouTube, and it's all about mechanisms, robotics, etc., in terms of LEGO Technic and Mindstorms. He has over 16,000 subscriptions already. And I think you're doing this just about 3 years, Ivan, is that correct?
Yeah, it began in 2018.
Okay, so this is quite a following you collected throughout those recent years. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think this is an interesting thing because we have a person who is an expert on like haptic toys and what they can reach for what they can bring in terms of education. And we have, of course, someone, Natalie, who is very fond of video games and how they can educate us and educate people and how they can be combined with teaching. So without further ado, we won't start immediately with our panel, Learning with Games and Robots, because Ivan will host a little presentation. And Ivan, if you are ready, I would say, please kick it off and tell us more about LEGO and how to learn about robotics and mechanics with them.
All right. Well, I host the YouTube channel Unbrick Me. It's all about mechanisms and robotics and all that good stuff. I've been a Mindstorms fan since 2009. Ever since then, I've been building my own robots and programming them, and also improving my skill with them. On my channel, I published 3 main robots. Beta Rex, he walks like a human. He can grab objects, dance, do all sorts of cool stuff. I also have a Resi 37, a very cute robot dog. And I also have Bobka. It's a very, it's a robot that walks in a very interesting way. You should definitely check it out. But Mindstorms specifically can be learned, is beneficial for education because in classroom, for example, it addresses student boredom. Sometimes students can get bored, and what LEGO Mindstorms has interactive play. For example, teamwork. You have one person that builds the robot, and you have another person that's more experienced in coding. You can code with LEGO Mindstorms in almost any language. The LEGO company specifically supports Python and Scratch, but with third parties, you can also use Python, with C, Java, and many more different languages. So can I share my screen and show you Beta Rex and Resi 37 and all those robots?
Let's do it.
All right, let me share screen. Share. All right, so here I am on my YouTube channel. I will quickly show you just a short video of it. So I have muted here. After this advertisement, of course, you will see the robot. So yeah, this is the robot Beta Rex. As you can see, he walks and grabs. And also on my YouTube channel, I do have building instructions for the robot in case you want to build it, and also a free program for it. And of course, you can also find the same with Resi 37, the very cute walking robot dog.
Okay. Will you be continuing, or was this the presentation?
I think that's pretty much it for my presentation.
Okay. So thank you, Ivan, for this short presentation on LEGO Mindstorms. It's interesting. What was your first contact with it? Have you been a kid and curious about how to build these robots and these like tinkering with Lego, or was it something different?
Well, basically, my mom wanted to get me a gift, and she was browsing different forums online. She saw this one post said, "What's a good gift for your kid? But don't say Lego Mindstorms. That's too expensive." And that's actually what piqued my mom's interest, and she bought me Lego Mindstorms first when I was 3 years old. But of course, I was too young back then, so we waited until I was 6, and after that, I sort of started building my robots. And the first robot I built, I did it with my grandfather. And after that, I became really interested in Lego Mindstorms. I discovered this whole community online. People like, Anika Brandsma and Lawrence Valk and all these different people were making so many of their own creations, publishing their own instructions. And I would build most of their robots that I would see online. And it was just such a very cool way to express my own creativity.
That's also an interesting point, expressing your own creativity with LEGO Mindstorms. How creative can you be? I have to say, I admit I'm a noob in terms of LEGO Mindstorms. So can you, like, when you buy a package, a certain robot or whatnot, can you then like edit the thing? Can you do different versions of it, or do you have to stick to the plan?
Well, with the current kit, you get about 1,000 pieces and 4 motors, a main hub, the computer that controls everything, a color sensor, and an ultrasonic sensor. So with the color sensor, for example, you can point it down to the floor and you draw like a black line and the robot will follow the line. You can do a code for that. Or with the ultrasonic sensor, you can make him avoid obstacles. If he sees something, he can follow your hand, for example. There is a lot of different possibilities with LEGO Mindstorms. In the kit itself, just using the pieces provided, the LEGO company offers you 5 different models, but fans have already created so many different types
500
of
more.
Yeah.
Sorry. So this is, and let's stick a little bit with childhood. Natalie, I think this is an interesting topic because recently I was thinking to myself, is it really the case that you have to be a little bit nostalgic about your own childhood to be engaged with games and with toys? I mean, this is a kind of a broad question, but still it's kind of interesting because every one of us like grew up in a different way, yeah, and we all have different experiences. Some are shared, some are not. But like in general, do you think a nostalgia to your own childhood is important in terms of being able to get really engaged with learning with video games and games in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it is important because I think when you doesn't matter how old you are, but when you think back on your childhood and when you like understand the fascination behind gaming, like in a nostalgic way, but also in a way when you understand how fascinated children are with games. and when you understand playfulness itself, because when we are growing older, we lose our playfulness. That's very, very sad. Not everybody, of course, but some people just stop playing, and they shouldn't do that. So I think it's very crucial to be a little bit nostalgic. Also, when you're like a game researcher, of course, you have to think back and remember all the good things that came with gaming or playing when you were young.
Yeah, I asked Ivan the question, so I will ask it to you too. What was your like initial motivation to become a games researcher? Do you have like a very fond memory of your childhood playing a certain game or a certain toy?
It's a good question as well. But I was into gaming when I was like very young. When the NES came out, it was my favorite console ever still. And my parents helped here a lot. I think parents play a very important role because they realized that I'm very much into gaming and that I'm so much interested in all the back then there were of course new games, also PC games. So I played the old role-playing games from the Schwarze Auge, the PC games, and my parents really I think they gave what I needed, gave me what I needed to become more interested in the medium. And my father is a teacher and an IT teacher, and he's also he does a little bit of programming as well. And I have so good memories when sitting down with him and program my first Visual Basic game. And so on. So it was like, I think that drove me. And then I started educational science at the university because I wanted to do something with media education. And then I got very much into the game studies field.
Great. So let's talk a little bit more about engagement in general. I think you have to kind of channel the attention and the motivation of kids, of teenagers, of young adults, and then use toys and games, use them for actual learning. In terms of, we talked a little bit about programming languages. This is an obvious case, I think, because if you need the programming language to bring something forward in terms of programming a game or programming a Lego robot, then you kind of need to learn it. But there are other ways where it's not that easy to really comprehend what is the actual learning thing that you pull out of something. This engagement, how do you engage people? Ivan, have you ever tried, for instance, bringing your Lego pieces and Lego Mindstorms into a classroom where you show the kids how this works and then know what exactly engages them?
Well, I haven't personally taught a Mindstorms class, but at my school, there used to be a specific Mindstorms class, like an elective almost, where a group of kids would come to a robotics class and they would be able to play with LEGO Mindstorms, program it. And I think specifically that engages kids is to have a specific project that they're working on. We had in school, in middle school, a project where we would film something as some sort of a story with the robots. They would interact together and we would work in pairs or sometimes in groups of 3. And we would program those robots in such a way that would make that story happen and make what we dreamed of come to life. I think that as long as the kids have some sort of plan, then they will be engaged and focused enough to make their project come alive. I have worked on this project called Robotics Dimensions. It was about robots traveling in these different dimensions. It was a very fun experience for me.
Great. Yeah, I think hands-on, something comes to life. These are great things to say, because this really is something that engages everyone. You know, when you know you can do something yourself, and it then comes alive in a way. And having your own project, of course, is very important. Natalie, you are also dealing with different topics that are, again, not so exactly focused. So what is the learning thing that you can bring away with it? So there is also something like gamification, for example. So where you just make a game and then try to teach, to inform about a certain topic that has nothing to do with technical information, that has nothing to do with an immediate learning progress, because people have to be engaged with the game to then learn something. This has always been a little bit complicated. Did your research say something else? Has it become easier to get people engaged to a certain topic through gaming?
I think it's not actually not really complicated. A lot of people just think it's complicated, and I think we also have we shouldn't use the term gamification, maybe, because gamification is more when you take something out of games like points and stuff like that and put it into a teaching scenario. I think giving grades is a bad gamification system, basically, but there are good gamification examples as well. But I think we should speak just about game-based learning. And I'm in this field now for years, and I see that we also have courses at the university where we teach teachers how to implement game-based learning methods in class. And it's still very hard to get the teachers on a level where they really use games, for instance, in class. But I think that the most important thing is also when it comes to engagement, is to understand that game-based learning is not just about playing games in classrooms. So it's much more. It can be centered around a teaching method with a certain game. It can also be a commercial game. It can be centered around a learning game. It can be, and that's a field where I'm working in the last couple of years, a bit more, is the question how to address gaming culture or gaming culture activities in classroom, and how to get the student engaged because they are engaged in gaming culture, and how we can link that into the educational field. And another thing is, and that links perfectly to the topic from Ivan, is the question how to create like playful situations, playful learning experiences. So we have a lot of topics where we can link on. And when it comes to a certain game, because you ask how we get the engagement to a certain game, I think the crucial part is always the method around it. So it's not about just giving the students the game and say, hey, play and you will learn something. It's about getting them getting a little bit more reflection about their actions in the game, talking about the games. And sometimes it doesn't really need to be that we play the game in classroom. We can just speak about games and the students will be engaged. And that's easy. That's an easy part, but still teachers don't do it or speak about gaming culture.
Can you cite an example on how this works? Maybe something you did recently with your students?
Mm-hmm. So recently, at the moment, we are working on a project. It's called Stream IT. And in this project, we look into gameplay video production and streaming, because that's a huge field in the gaming culture. So gameplay videos are amongst the most popular formats in YouTube, for instance, and everybody knows it. And we also work here with very, very young children from 7 years on up to maybe 16, 17, 18. So it's a very broad age group. And everybody knows YouTubers, everybody knows Let's Players and so on. And we are asking the question, how can we bring this fascination into the classroom? And we are developing a teaching methods where the students create gameplay videos, and with OBS Studio. Then they're not streaming it because of data protection and everything, but they're creating gameplay videos, talk about their favorite games, and they are getting. So we are trying to also prove that there are a lot of competences that the students use here. Communication is perfect for teaching German, for instance, or English, or presentation skills, or creative skills, and technical skills, of course, because you need all the setup and the video cutting stuff and so on. So it's a very, very good approach, I think, to engage people in learning and to link to gaming culture in classroom.
Great. So even you are doing what Natalie is doing with her students already full-time, I suppose. Is this your full-time job, being a YouTuber?
Yeah, I would say this is my full-time job to be a YouTuber. I dedicate most of my available time to making videos, planning ahead, and really seeing what's popular and to make videos about those topics. I cover mechanisms, and that's a very interesting sort of subject because mechanisms can be integrated very nicely with robotics together. If you have 2 motors, maybe you can activate 4 different functions with a gearbox or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because Natalie told us a little bit about game-based learning, which is something that is not something that has a long history, because video games are just 50 years old, approximately. With LEGO Technic, I think it's over 40 years now, and it's over 40 years of educating and teaching children how to build robots and how to build more advanced technical things. That is not just playing around, but like building something. So I would suggest the history on Lego-based learning is a little bit older. Natalie, you can say something different, of course, a little bit older than game-based learning with video games. So what do you think, Ivan? What are the learnings from over about 40 years of LEGO Technic? What happened in the late 70s, early 80s? What is different now than it was back then?
Well, LEGO Technic began in 1977. So just 3 years later, we were already in the 1980s. Now, initially with LEGO Technic, it was all just focused on mechanisms. There were motors, but they were integrating only very basic functionality. Now, in the early 80s, there was this book called Mindstorms, written by Dr. Seymour Papert. He worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And basically, he developed this programming language called Logo, which was considered the first programming language to be kid-friendly, where kids could learn it pretty easily. And that greatly interested the LEGO company. And so their partnership began to develop LEGO Mindstorms. They worked on, I think, for over a decade on LEGO Mindstorms. They were prototyping the RCX unit at MIT for quite a while before its unveiling in 1998. And even before then, before LEGO Mindstorms, LEGO Mindstorms is, a computer individual. You can transfer a code from your laptop and put it onto the brick, and it'll run independently. But before that, there was just basic sort of command blocks, I would say. You could connect them to your computer and have just basic functionality. LEGO Mindstorms was not just revolutionary because of the coding possibilities, but also because of the building possibilities. There is not a lot of robotics kits where you can use the same motors and basic sort of code and build different robots. With LEGO Technic and LEGO System, you have a wide variety of different parts. You can make so many different robots, and I think that's really what set Mindstorms apart. In fact, there were more than 80,000 new kits sold within just the first 3 months of LEGO Mindstorms release. So I think that's definitely a fascinating little fun fact.
Yeah. So and do you also try to build really old models from the late 70s? Do you have them on your YouTube page as well?
I do have a bulldozer from 1979 with lots of cool mechanisms. That's actually going to be in my latest video that's going to come out in like less than a day from now, less than 24 hours. It's going to be my latest video. But I do have every single generation of LEGO Mindstorms. There was the 98 version, 2006, 2013, and 2020 version. All four of them I do have because I like to collect LEGO Mindstorms and these vintage things. The way they all work and have their own sort of evolution in terms of their design is really fascinating to me. The first Mindstorms, the rotation sensor was not built into the motor. It was a separate unit. And in the second generation of Mindstorms, it was built in. And that was a massive improvement. The second generation of Mindstorms also had a sound sensor. And you could also program the robot to even recognize basic phrases like go left, go right, and do sort of that cool stuff. In 2013, with the EV3 generation, as LEGO called it, it stood for Evolution 3. It was actually the most sort of hackable LEGO computer. You could put your own sort of like operating system on it, very basic, and people made EV3 dev, and it was a operating system for the EV3, and people just did so many cool, crazy things with it. It was a really amazing time to be a LEGO Mindstorms fan.
And does it also age well, like the older models from the 70s, early 80s? Do they break at some point, or when you like take care of them, they work 40 years later?
Well, the model from 2006 works perfectly 40 years, works perfectly even today on Windows 10 computers. But for example, the older RCX unit, it's very tricky to get it working on new computers. You have to run the software with an emulator, or you just have to own an old computer. And with the models before Mindstorms, they were released under the LEGO Education line. They called them DACTA, and they're pretty much, unless you own old computers, you're going to have a very tough time to get them working today.
Okay, so it's a little bit of tinkering and hanging out with emulators and stuff, just with old software, actually, right?
Yeah, it's just old software, yeah.
Natalie, I also know for a fact that you not just work with game-based learning and digital games, but you also work with haptics and maybe also with kind of toy-like robots and other interesting tech stuff. I don't know if we want to talk about the walking and moving robots. Can we do that?
I'll bring it to me.
Please.
The background.
Because I have to tell this right now. Natalie and me, we yesterday tried out a telepresence robot, which was very fun because I actually walked around with the robot in her room, where she is right now. So this is interesting. So you're very versatile with your game-based learning techniques, actually.
Yes. Because it's always very strongly linked to technology, actually. Of course, and a lot of technology is driven by games, so that works really well. And I think you experienced it yesterday, that when you walk with our telepresence robot through our university, it's like a game, basically.
It is, yeah. I took him on a walk, and I tried to drive on the narrow lines so that I don't like fall over with the robot. But you always had him in your hand, so nothing happened.
And yeah, I can't adjust because it's not on, so I can't like put maybe I can do that. Let's see. Yeah, now it's like the screen is now properly. So we have a research project. It's called Telepresence Robots in Education, TRINE, and we're looking with other partners from Malta, from Macedonia, from Germany, on the question how we can implement this technology in educational settings. So the technology is not that new, actually. Okay, it's just sign-ins. It's not that new. So a couple of I think, good quality telepresence robots. So they came out a couple of years ago, but they're still quite expensive, and not that many people are using it, of course. I think that was 3 years ago. I was in Iceland, and the university at also Project Partners Iceland, the University of Akureyri, I always pronounce it wrong, and there's also a school in Ólafsfjörður, and especially the university, they use these robots for teaching scenarios. For instance, when students, because there's a lot of teaching, distance teaching in Iceland, because especially in winter, not everybody can come to the university because of the snow or the traffic situation. And then there's the possibility at the university to just link into the robot and present something there or engage with your class. And also the school there is using it. And then I visited the university in the telepresence robot, and that was like, it's a completely different thing. And I think Robert experienced it yesterday. It's not like this setting, like when you're in a Zoom now a StreamYard situation. It's completely different. And of course, not every teaching situation, you need a robot, because when it's like more like a talk, when you speak to people, you don't really need it. But when you're engaging in smaller situation, and when it's about giving the visitors some kind of an agency to explore the room, and to be more present, actually, and it could be also very good for teamwork experiences and so on. And when you have a meeting and you don't just use a Zoom conference, when you use like an actually a robot, it you could really benefit from it. And in the project, it's an Erasmus Plus project, we will develop a platform, a website will be, it's not online yet, tryingplatform.com, where we will collect all our research outputs and ideas for educators on how to use this technology for students and so on.
Yeah, for me yesterday, it actually was from robot to robot. That's actually true what you said before. So Natalie, is it also the case that with your students, you sometimes really try to get away from the digital sphere, digital realm, and get back to prototyping on paper, working with things that you can like touch, maybe doing some mechanical stuff too, to get an idea of certain things that you then bring into the digital space later on?
I think the digital space is always linked to also analog things, basically. Also, when you teach, of course, game design, you start with a paper prototype or something like that, and you get engaged with modding, actually board games and stuff like that. So I think the haptic approach to gaming is always very, very important. And I think also when you look into teaching methods that are centered around game design, it's also very good to just tell teachers, when you start with that, you don't have to be a programmer for it. Of course, there are great tools, like easy programming tools like Scratch, but you can also start about thinking about a digital game with using Lego, for instance. So to have this link here. And so, of course, we are also having Lego here at the center to get the students engaged with game design. So it's also important to have this link to the analog world.
And there is also another link which I find interesting. It's the link between playing between play and game, where game has more to do with rules and with structure, and playing has more to do with playing around, being creative, and not having a certain goal that you run towards. Even this is also interesting, I think, because of LEGO Mindstorms and LEGO Technic seems a little bit advanced for kids, at least, where you need to have some experience how playing around with Lego works in the first place, and then you move on to more serious stuff, if you will, and work more with mechanics and with coding and so on. So what would you suggest in terms of getting a first-time experience? Do you think it's where is like the room where playing and gaming like clash, where you play around and then you are so engaged that you want to do the serious stuff, but then you have to learn to code, etc.?
Well, I think when you buy the Mindstorms kit for the very first time, you can, build and code some initially kind of basic robots. But as you sort of progress and learn more about Mindstorms, you immediately have this wish to code at an advanced level. So, and even, building with Lego, you already have so many different possibilities, so many different mechanisms. So maybe just when you get a Lego Mindstorm set, also perhaps get a few small, Technic sets, so that way you have sort of an experience of building with the system. Lego Technic and Lego Mindstorms, when you build them, they're fundamentally the same, just Lego Mindstorms has the computer in it. Now, when you start with Lego Mindstorms, you start with Scratch, and by following the activities, you can sort of see where the basic commands go in terms of Scratch. Now, one great thing about Lego Mindstorms is that you have, in Python, a word block translator, so you can see what each word block will look like in Python code. So you can sort of advance your skills a little bit more that way. And of course, there's other different programming languages that you can also choose from. Now with Lego Mindstorms, I think mostly you're going to be playing with it and really seeing the experience. But you can also make your own games with Lego Mindstorms. For example, if you have two different robots and you can build a little soccer arena, for example, and have your friend and play with them. Also, you can actually code a game on the brick itself. Now, with the newer Mindstorms Hub, it's not super easy because the screen is just a 5x5 square LED style. But with the older NXT or EV3, we had a pretty, like a 128 by 128 screen pixels. So you had a lot of space to work with. And for example, that classic game where you have two different walls and a ball bounces between them, you can make that out of code in Lego Mindstorms. And I think that's definitely a very good thing, because it sort of exactly bridges the gap between playing and gaming.
Yeah, that's great. And we are maybe in the last third of our wonderful panel with Natalie Denk and Ivan Filipov, but I still want to bring in AI. This is a huge topic, of course, but still, Ivan, is it possible, or do people like a more advanced stuff with the Lego Mindstorms models, like coding an AI for them, or like augment them maybe also with different things, so that you can take a basic model and then program like a decent AI and then some augmentations, so that you have, I don't know, a cleaning robot or something. Is this something that is possible or not?
Well, when Lego Mindstorms was first introduced, like a year after that, it was featured on this TV show called Computer Chronicles. And on that show, it was stated that more than 50% of Mindstorms users are adults. And also on the 2011 National Geographic show called Mega Factories, where Mindstorms was also featured, that same exact fun fact was also featured, that the majority of Mindstorms user base is adults. So a lot of these people also have mechanical engineering backgrounds, robotics backgrounds. They're top students maybe in their university. So they experiment a lot with Lego Mindstorms and other robotics platforms. With the EV3, it was the most advanced technically Lego Mindstorm system. So if you actually look up online EV3 AI Lab, you will actually find a very interesting AI platform coded in, I think it was Java, and people actually made some decent artificial intelligence with LEGO Mindstorms, and that's actually really cool since, you know, LEGO is often associated with kids, and although that is technically the target demographic, a lot of adults and advanced users really appreciate LEGO Mindstorms.
Yeah. Natalie, many of your students, I think, are also adults, not just young adults, but adults who try to get another education in, so to say. Are there differences in terms of perceiving game-based learning with, say, a 40-year-old and a 20-year-old?
It depends, because we have at our university, of course, the students, or at our center, the students that are already very much into gaming or playing. We have a lot of students that study with us, teachers that study with us, and we have the teachers that are fond of gaming, let's say. And I think also the teachers or educators that are 40 or 50, there's not much of a difference in terms of understanding the teaching subjects. Of course, they have another background because they grew up totally different, in a different culture, basically.
Yeah. And also preconceptions about what games can bring. Can we really learn from them, right? The older you are and the less experience you had as a child growing up with video games and with games, the more skeptical you are, maybe a bit. No?
Yeah, it very much depends from individual to individual, I have to say,
Sure.
because we have older students that are really, really much into, and younger students that are very, very, they don't dare to do too many things with their students. So I think it's hard to say so, but and then that links perfectly to one of the first questions, because everybody has some kind of a nostalgic background on video gaming. Also, even if you are 40, for instance, of course you know games from your childhood, and that you can, it's much linked, and a lot of 40, 50-year-old people play video games as well.
I mean, by now, of course, I'm 42 and I grew up with video games still because time passed, right? Okay, but you do have also students that are older and
yes, because it's like all the whole Danube University is postgraduate. We have postgraduate courses, and our students usually have a bachelor degree and then come to us and do the master, or a lot of students, because it's also they're already professionals working in a field and they're doing the courses here part-time. So here we have like a lot of students like 25 plus, and I think the average age is like 37, like that.
Okay,
so
okay.
Kind of my age. So yeah.
And I think it's important to mention that Austria and specifically the Danube University Krems is kind of a pioneer when it comes to video game studies and education. There is a long history by now. Like I think you started in the mid 2000s with the first esports academy.
Yeah, so actually our center was founded 2005. And a lot of people don't know that, because when they are now Googling courses or game research, and there's the Center for Applied Game Study, that must be new, but it's not really new now. And we have the first game studies course in 2006. We still have the game studies course. And we didn't start an esports course, but we had a curriculum very early. And now we will start it next year. So that's the esports sector. But we're talking about esports like before the real hype.
Yeah, I think it's really worth mentioning that. And also, dear viewers and listeners, if you Natalie, do you have the book nearby to show? Because it's also something that
I always have this book, because I have so many.
There is a reader out which was a LUDIC Society. I haven't read it yet, but I'm very excited to be reading it. It's many, lots
you
of
can
input.
even build a dice if you can't decide which chapter you read first. And it's the game is basically based on our conference, Frog Future and Reality of Gaming. It happened last year and will happen in end of November. So when you go to frog-vienna.at, you can still sign up, and the Call of Papers is still online. And the theme from this year will be the magic of games. And last year it was a LUDIC Society, and we invited all the speakers to also contribute to this wonderful book, and it's now available. And we worked on it a couple of months. And very proud.
It has also many educational papers in it, or like
we have a chapter, that's about educational approaches. We also have a chapter that's the games play and a better future. Here we find more educational approaches, and then we have also a strong history related chapter. So, and also what's very important is the first chapter, gameplay and identity, where we also address a lot of topics related to gender and diversity, for instance.
What's the publisher? When
the university, the Technic University. We have our own.
Okay. So, and Ivan, obviously we can find all your videos on your YouTube channel, Unbrick Me. Do you have something in mind throughout the next years? Will you be continuing your YouTube channel and your tinkering with LEGO Mindstorms, or do you also maybe have an idea of putting together a book or something different?
Well, I am planning to continue my YouTube channel and hopefully gets many more thousands more subscribers. But actually, in terms of a book, I am planning to write a Mindstorms book where it's going to be a supplemental sort of book that kids can buy with the Mindstorms set. And it'll feature, a certain amount of original creations that they can build with the kit, as well as the basics of programming in both Scratch and Python. So I do have, a plan of the robots that will be in that book, and I did start designing some of them myself. So and hopefully it'll come out sometime next year. I hope.
Great. So, and also to again bridge the gap between the digital and the analog space, is there also a LEGO scene who tries to emulate the actual robots in a virtual space, like to reprogram them like in an emulator or something? Is this something that is a thing in the LEGO scene?
There is lots of third parties that allow you to program robots virtually and see how they will drive and turn and perform. You can also build robots digitally using, for example, programs like stud.io. It's a program that I personally use to build my different creations, and but the LEGO company itself does not really offer you a tool to emulate robots virtually. You have to turn to third parties, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also it's a kind of a copyright problem, I would suppose, no? When you just do your own virtual LEGO environment.
Maybe, but the LEGO company usually doesn't go after fans that want to promote them.
Okay. They're not like Nintendo or something.
No, they're usually pretty open, and they allow fans to post, virtual emulators and stuff like that.
Okay, I was just mentioning Nintendo because there were some cases where they tried to take down fan games, for example, very quickly because of copyright reasons. Talking about streaming, Ivan, do you know, is there a community of LEGO streamers maybe? Like on Twitch or something?
Well, big YouTubers that are in the LEGO space usually live stream, for example, every week or so. I personally don't really live stream that often. I tend to focus more on pre-made videos. On Twitch, for example, there is several LEGO YouTubers that like to live stream. Jangbricks is the biggest and the YouTuber, the original one that's been around since like 2010. He also has a channel over on Twitch where he does live streaming content. So I would say, yeah, the live streaming space is pretty big in the LEGO community.
Okay. So, and to wrap it up, finally, Natalie, please tell me about action-oriented media pedagogics. What is it about?
That's the title of the course, master course that we are having together with the TH Köln and the Akademie Remscheid in Germany. And I think, I don't know if the English translation is perfect, but the German word is handlungsorientierte Medienpädagogik. And
okay.
It's an approach to media competence where that is very much linked to life world orientation, basically.
So it's very practical, but it's not about action being like fighting or something.
I have to disappoint you. But of course, the students are very, very active and they do very project-based methods. And a lot of youth workers are doing this course.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, Natalie and Ivan, for this enlightening panel and all the information. You can find more about Natalie Denk at, as it says, Center for Applied Game Studies at Danube University Krems, and Ivan is on at Unbrick Me on YouTube. I think that's all for now. This was a wonderful panel called Learning with Games and Robots at B3 Biennial of the Moving Image. Thank you, and have a great B3.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, happy playing.
Thank you.